What's up, people? It's your man on the outside looking in, here to take a look at this new Eureka 7 PV, if you can still call it new. It's about 2 weeks old now. I apologize, I'm hella late with this video for anybody who cares. You know, this came out, I want to say like 2 Thursdays ago, and the reason why it takes so long is because I was waiting for a subtitled version, but that never came around. And also, I had just gotten finished with the Soccer Quest video. I was exhausted. And, you know, so I thought, you know what, let me just wait a little while. But subtitle version never came out. And, you know, it's understandable. Eureka 7's not as popular as it used to be. And, you know, it's just a PV. So, you know, hopefully, you know, when the actual film comes out, we wouldn't have to wait super long for subs. Anyway, I'm here to do an analysis of this new 90-second PV like I did last time. But before I get in, I just want to cover some news that we got between the releases of my last Eureka 7 video and now. The film is coming out on September 16th, 2017. Now, that's important to note for a few of my comments for the trailer talk when we get into it. But another thing is that Funimation will be handling the licensing for the worldwide releases, the English worldwide releases of the film. And now that's to be expected. They're the ones that picked up the rights for Eureka 7 after Bandai shut down. Got the rights to Eureka 7 AO. They dubbed that. Now they said that they're planning on releasing during the fall, which is not too far off from, you know, the September release date. Hopefully that's the case. I remember at Anime Expo they had the director, and he was saying that the release should be closely after the September release date. When I looked at the video, the translator kind of said it in a more assumptive tone, so I wouldn't take that as a flat-out confirmation. So who knows? I'll wait until Funimation actually announces something to the release date. As long as it's before the DVD release or the Blu-ray release in Japan, because by the time the Blu-ray comes out, somebody's just gonna, you know, subtitle it, fan sub it, and then, you know, they're gonna watch it through that. It's gonna be hard for a lot of anime fans to justify, you know, going off some town to watch a limited screening when they already seen it fan sub. So hopefully they get it out before then. But that's great. Next piece of news is that the entire original cast is returning from the original series, and this is one of the things that I said I wanted to happen, and that's great. We got, you know, everybody's coming back. Yuko Sanpun's coming back as Renton. Kaori Natsuki's coming back as Eureka. Everybody's coming back except for one, which is Keiji Fujiwara as Holland, and apparently he's having health issues, which is unfortunate. They replacing it by Tomiyuki Morikawa, who, you know, from what I've heard in this PV and the other roles I've heard him in, he's voicing Sengoku in Welcome to the Ballroom, which is airing right now. He voiced NL in One Piece, so he's pretty close to, you know, Holland. He's got that same deep but not too deep, kind of smooth voice that Keiji Fujiwara has. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm sure he'll fill the role in just fine based on the PV. But mostly everybody's back. Pretty much everybody that's confirmed. And it's noted, like, you know, since Yuko Sanpun is back in the movie, Renton is gonna be in the movie. Also, Idrox Sursen is gonna be voiced by Tori Fujiwara, who voiced Amuro in the Mobile Suit Gundam series. That's all I got for other news, I believe. I hope I'm not forgetting anything. So let's get into the trailer. Anyway, we start off the trailer, and they start off with some footage from the original series. Now, note that the footage is in 4:3, and I just want to point that out there, and I will talk about that later. But first shot, I want to talk about the new Nirvash design. So we got the new design of the Nirvash, which has a much more scientific and more military looking design that it had in the first series. But later on in this PV, we actually see a different version of it. But let me focus on the one we see right here. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of more, it has like a more tubular design to it. It's not as sleek and smooth as the Spec 1 that we had in the show. Now, the Spec 1 still shows up in the show. We see it later on in the PV. So this is not a redesign of the version. They're gonna tie it in that, you know, it gets restructured, it gets retooled, most likely after they Gecko steals it. But, you know, you see it has a, you know, the gold frame is more exposed. It's a lot more blocky. But one thing I want to point out, there's only one cockpit, and, you know, so this goes to show that the Nirvash hasn't fully evolved in its 2 cockpit state. And if you remember from the series, they had that flashback. The reason why the Nirvash was so special is because they had 2 cockpits. We see that at this point that it hasn't evolved in the state to where they understand how it works and how, you know, LFOs are necessarily supposed to be built. So that's a cool feature. Not too sure how that's gonna work out. Okay, so you see Adrock, and then we see this character, and I gotta take points away from myself. At first, I didn't know who this was. I thought that this was like either a new character or the lieutenant that was on the easy mode, who I don't even remember the name right now. But then I went on the website, I looked up, and I'm like, oh, it's fucking Tahoe. I completely forgot that he was a part of the military before she went off of island, but I did not recognize her in that hat and that hairstyle. So that's an L for me. I did not recognize her, but it seems like, you know, we're gonna see her as in part of, according to the website, the Welfare Inspection Crew. So that's like a new term. Don't know what it means. Who knows? Maybe if I get some subtitles, I can figure it out. But yeah, the Tahoe, younger, in charge. So, you know, we're gonna maybe at this point, you know, she's probably still with Dewey. So, you know, we're gonna see how exactly their relationship was like before the start of the series, because, you know, we had in the original series they said that, you know, she and Dewey were together, and, you know, Holly, you know, took the girl that he dumped, and this, that, and the third. So we're gonna see like the culmination of that in this film. So cool to see. Moving on, more flashbacks of Char and Ray. You know, I'll get to those later because I got a whole rant about this. Just note that this is original footage. We see the footage of Eureka from the first trailer, and then we see Dewey in a LFO. Now in the first series we knew that Dewey was an LFO pilot, but this is the first time we've actually seen him pilot an LFO, and this is the first time we've seen him pilot an LFO. Now I know in the manga, you know, we saw him pilot an LFO, but manga's not canon. I know some people like it, but it's not canon, so I don't care. The website says that he's a master LFO pilot. In the show, we never got to see him pilot an LFO. He's Holland's brother, so it makes sense that you know, Holland was always in the shadow, so it makes sense that he'll be a master LFO pilot. So can't wait to see him go in. And, you know, maybe he'll give more respect to Dewey, because, you know, Dewey's one of the more criticized elements of the original series. So can't wait to see that. Next shot I want to talk about is that we see Charles and Ray in the red and blue LFOs that we saw in the last trailer. I should have been able to figure this out because of, you know, they've always had that motif, but this is, you know, these are their suits, and that makes sense. You know, they're boardless, they're you know, they're color synchronized, so that I should have been able to figure out. So Charles and Ray, big part in this series. Now remember, Ray, you know, they say that the Summer of Love made Ray lose her ability to conceive a child, and that was something that was never really explained. So hopefully in this movie we'll finally figure out how exactly that happened. You know, it was kind of implied, because, you know, Eureka 7, it's a vague show. They don't really outright state a lot of things, but it's implied that maybe like Ray is just coming to this conclusion just to cope, or something literally happened. So maybe in this film we'll finally legitimately find out what happened, because it looks like Charles and Ray are going to play a huge part in this film. More close-ups, not really telling us much, but anti-body crawlians are back in this, and this is what doesn't really make sense from the series, because, you know, when anti-body crawlians showed up for the first time, that was the first time they ever showed up, you know, period. Nobody knew like why they were there, how they showed up, but maybe this film will explain that it was a big cover-up, and, you know, because the whole film is just explaining the backstory of the first Summer of Love. You know, hopefully that, or maybe it's just an excuse for them to get some action scenes in there. It could be one of the two, who knows. Now this, I don't know what the fuck this is. I'm just gonna assume that this is the original command, the Corallian command cluster, except it looks like a giant Technicolor theater. It reminds me of the L's from the Gundam 00 movie, if you remember that piece of trash, you know. But hopefully I'm getting a lot of vibes from that. Hopefully it's not as ridiculous as that was in that movie, But I'm gonna assume that this is some type of Corellian command cluster that had to be stopped because of the first summer of love. Yeah, not much you can figure out without subtitles. So, but that's my assumption based on what I'm seeing here. And so now, an interesting shot in this trailer is that we see Eureka, we see Eureka and she's in a ejected cockpit seat that I believe is from the Nirvash. The seats are almost identical to the Spec 1's Nirvash. So I think that, I'm guessing what happens is that Adrock ejected her, and this is when the first summer of love happens. And that's how she survived, and that's how Adrock ended up disappearing. But the LFO is golden, and I'll get that to later. This is probably one of the devil fishes that Dewey had. And you see she's getting emotional and she's crying. Now that doesn't make complete sense because we know in the past, Eureka, she didn't know who she was. She was kind of a blank slate. She didn't really develop emotions until she found the kids. So this gets me to think that Eureka did have a emotional connection to Adrock, and I'm guessing Dewey or somebody in the military did something to her brain to make her forget. Because back in the series, even though she eventually tells Renton what happened, she kind of acts like she doesn't remember clearly. So this gets me to believe that there was some kind of mind manipulation going on after the event, and that's why she's so vague about everything by the time the series comes around. So I'm excited to see what that's all about. But she's being emotional, and we know that she didn't have emotions until she met the kids and later Renton. So hopefully they explain this off, but this is a good development, more complexity for Eureka's backstory. And so moving deeper into the PV, we see the Nirvash action pack. It has more guns. Kind of hinting, implying that the Nirvash was used as a war weapon in the beginning, and then as in Nirvash, its style evolves into more close quarters combat using the boomerangs. Like I said, we don't have the boomerangs like you had in the original series, so it's more basic military combat, this version of Nirvash, and then later on after they leave, it'll evolve into a more stylized version that you see at the beginning of the series. Now we have this scene where you see Adrock. Earlier, remember in the last scene, we saw the shot of Eureka covered in blood, so we thought that maybe she was on an assassination tip, but it looks like she's either coming to kill Adrock or save him. And the expression on his face means that, implies that he's not expecting her to be there. So this is either one of two scenarios. It's either Adrock is locked up or being quarantined by Dewey, and he doesn't want him to stop the first summer of love, or he doesn't want the first summer of love to happen. He wants to try to destroy the command cluster, and he's keeping him there, or he sent Eureka to kill him, but Adrock manages to change his mind. So there's a lot that we can speculate here. It's basically once again not much to go off of. We don't understand what they're saying. We don't know what the narration is, but that's my theory based on what happens in later parts of the scene. So I'm guessing here, she's coming to kill Adrock. Adrock manages to convince her not to kill him, to stop the summer of love, to try to find out what her origin is. So that's my assumption based on what I know about the series in this scene right here. Now we see the devilfish. Now I talked about the gold devilfish, and it looks like this is the devilfish that Dewey pilots, and it's the same color as the hand we saw holding Eureka's pilot seat when she was getting emotional. So it means that both Dewey and Holland both piloted devilfishes back in the day. Now to pilot the devilfish by itself takes a lot of strain on the body. So from that alone, we know that Dewey's a beast of a ref boarder and a LFO pilot based on that. So if he can pilot the devilfish as easily or as good as Holland is, he's easily a top tier pilot. So in this version of the devilfish, we don't know what happened to it or if it gets destroyed, but it's interesting to see that these prototype LFOs, we're finding out the origins of this film, which is the best part of what this film is going to be. Moving on, there's a big battle between anti-body Corellians. We're seeing a lot of shots that we got from the previous trailer. And another thing to note, that this image of Tylo is in space. So it looks like they have a whole ship and fleet in space. So a big part of this movie is going to be on space. Maybe that big battle that we see with the anti-body Corellians is on the moon. which is why they don't know about it on the planet. That makes sense. You know, I just thought of that right there because it is a very lunar surface. So that makes a lot of sense. That might actually be what the case is here, but who knows? Type 0 being activated. Okay, another good shot. Now, you see this version of the Nirvash is actually different from the concept art we saw. Now, it still has the one large cockpit from the engineering, but you look at the ears are shaped very much like the Spec 3 in the little chibi version that we had in the movie, Pocket Full of Rainbows. So maybe this is like the first instance of the Nirvash evolving, but we never see those ears later on. So I'm interested to see how it reverts back to its original form that you saw in the series. But it looks like, you know, even before Renton, Nirvash had a desire to evolve, and it's mostly because, you know, maybe because, you know, the relationship between Adrock and Eureka, you know, caused it to evolve. And then when Adrock died, it devolved back to the Spec 1. That's a possibility. But it's interesting to know. Like, these are like, that's why I'm doing this video, to like kind of point out these little things that you might not notice on first glance. You know, that's, you know, Holland and Ray in action. I already talked about that. Okay, now here's something that you know, I was somewhat worried about in the last discussion video I did about how there seems to be a lot of action in this film, and I'm fine with that. It's a film, you can, you know, you're free to have more action, to have faster pacing, but you know, I'm not as worried as I was before, but because it seems to be like a lot more story elements based on this trailer, so I'm not as worried about that as I was last time. But I do hope that, you know, the movie doesn't stop and have a 20-minute long action sequence like a lot of the shonen adaptation movies, like the Bleach movies back in the day. Like half the movie would just be a big battle scene and nothing was really happening. But, you know, Eureka 7 and Bleach are on two different tiers of quality, so. Okay, so this is shot, and you will see the gold devilfish, which is piloted by Dewey, is attacking the Nirvash, which, you know, this is what leads me to believe that, you know, Dewey is trying to kill Adrock in this scene and trying to stop whatever they're trying to do, which is stop, you know, either the activation of the command clusters. So even back then, Dewey was showing his, you know, nasty colors based on this trailer, as we know from the original series. And of course we see Holland, he's lowing, and he says Shiso, which I believe it, he's either saying Shiso or Taisho, which means commander, and at this point in time Dewey is his commander, so obviously he's, you know, against whatever Dewey is trying to do based on that event. Okay, so now this is when Renton has a predominant presence in the trailer, and, you know, Eureka, you know, shows up, crashes on the house. We get the original scenes from the show and all that. Now, here's what I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to say this right now. It looks like they're going to be using original footage from the show in the movie, and that's one thing that I did not like. And the reason why I say this is because, like I said earlier, the movie comes out in September, and there's a lot of original footage in this PV. And also, there's a lot of screenshots of original footage on the website. Now, so that right there is like, they wouldn't do all that if it wasn't actually going to be in the film. So that disappoints me a lot. And it looks like the stuff that's non-flashback, that is the current story, is the original footage. So that alone puts a major hamper on my excitement for this film, on what this film is actually going to do. It makes me question the second movie, which is supposed to be mostly a recap of the story, whereas this one, you know, it shows, you know, the backstory, then it starts retelling the film. But this is actually a step back from Pocket Full of Rainbows, and the reason being is, if you look back at Pocket Full of Rainbows, look at the footage, it's in 4:3. Now, back in, you know, 2000s, it was normal to have 4:3 footage for a TV. You know, now, you know, HD 720 is the standard. That's usually shown in 16:9. And in Pocket Full of Rainbows, the old footage, they remastered the footage to where it was 16:9. And so even though it was the same footage, they at least bumped it up to where it was consistent with everything else. This goes back and forth between aspect ratios. And I'm like, and I'm literally thinking, are you seriously gonna air something in a theater with 4:3 footage in 2017? And it looks like they are, and that's crazy to me. That is literally crazy to me. So unless, I don't know, they have some clever way to tell, like it's like, for instance, maybe the second, maybe like most of the movies in a flashback and the new stuff is in 4:3, and Renton is syncing back to these times when the footage is in 4:3. It's still 4:3 footage. You couldn't update this to where it was 16:9? Like, really, in 2017? So this kind of just, it says a lot about the film. It makes me worried about a lot of things. Like, are y'all really trying to make something new out of this? Is this just a money grab? It questions a lot, because like, if you can't, put in the effort to redo this animation, because it's been done before. We've had films that, One Piece is doing it right now with a lot of their specials. Redo footage from, the 90s and whatever, in the early 2000s, and they've been doing it for a while now. So, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that, they're using, that they're still rehashing footage, which is a major problem with the last movie. And on top of that, they're not even remastering the footage to be more updated. So, sigh, I guess. I hope that, they, I don't know, I hope I'm wrong. I hope maybe they show the film and it's still in the original aspect in a 16:9 aspect ratio, or maybe that this footage just isn't as apparent. But based on some of the things I see on the website, that's not gonna be the case. But yeah, let's move on in the trailer. And we see the scene with Eureka in what I'm assuming is Adrock in the cockpit of the Nirvash, and it looks like compact drive activates just like it was shown in the original series. Now, there's a little bit of retconning here, because in the original series they showed it with the basic Spec 1 cockpit, so it looks like they're retooling the story a little bit, which is, I'll talk about that later. But they have a double cockpit that's similar to, what was it, Gundam 00 with in Awakening of a Trailblazer, where they had I can't remember the name of the suit. The Harute? Yeah, the Harute, where it was basically a back-to-back double cockpit, and it looks like that's the concept they're losing with this version of the Nirvash. But it looks like this is when Nirvash's compact drive overreacts, and that's when we get the first Summer of Love to happen. And this is when, later we saw that scene earlier with Eureka's cockpit ejected. So I'm assuming that Adrock ejects the cockpit as opposed to pulling it out the compact drive, as we saw in the flashback of the original series. So a little bit of retooling, that's fine. It's a minor scene in the original, as long as it gets the same point across. Moving on in the trailer, and more original footage, and you see a lot of Charles and Ray. Now I want to go to the website real quick. Alright, now on the website, when you go to characters, the first restriction is Renton Beams. And in parentheses it says Thurston. Now it says, a 14-year-old who grew in the local city of Belfort. I think I mean Belforce. Emergency emerges from emotional diamonds, whatever that means. Like I said, this is Google Translate. In that he's the son of Artrek. In 9 years have passed. Ray and Charles adopted. Blah 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 blah. A bunch of stuff that does make sense, but it says, basically Ray and Charles adopted him. And this gets me to think, okay, it looks like in this version of the story, the Summer of Love happens, Adrock dies, and they adopt Renton when he's still young. So they're cutting out Axel, they're cutting out, everybody, well not pretty much everybody. It looks like they're cutting out Axel, which, his voice actor is dead, so that makes sense. That they would just cut him out the story. And it looks like Charles and Ray are already his parents right off the bat, before he even meets Holland and the guys. Now, I don't know how I feel about this at all, because on one hand, this kind of confirms that, okay, you're changing the story around. We knew that was gonna happen. We knew that they were gonna have to trim some stuff, and the best way to do that is to manipulate things. But the idea of having Charles and Ray as his adopted parents from the jump, I don't know how I feel, because like to me the episodes where Renton goes and meets Charles and Ray for the first time, he lives with them, they're like between, you know, the best episodes of the series in my opinion, you know, because it's pretty much the defining moment in Renton's development, that, you know, he doesn't have to follow Holland even though he was his role model, and that there's other people to look up to. So the idea that right off the bat he's already his major influence, and he develops the personality that he develops at the beginning of the series, it makes me, I'm on, this is where I gotta like separate my fandom of the original show, and have to attempt to look at this movie as a standalone movie. And a lot of fans are gonna have issues with this, but based on what I'm reading from the website, based on these crappy Google translations, in the PV, you know, Charles and Ray adopt Renton very early on in the series, before he even meets Holland and Eureka. And I don't know how I feel about that. Really don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel about them cutting Axel out the story, because he's not a very important part of the story, but he's a major part of Renton's character. And I don't know how I feel about that. And this is something that I'm just gonna have to, I feel like in the theater I'm just gonna have to hold my fanboy back and kind of just recognize that this is something new. It's not the same story, and I'm just gonna have to, I'm gonna have to fight it. And I think a lot of fans are not gonna be cool with it. A lot of fans are gonna be like, what the fuck, you know, because it's not like the original. But my issue comes in is, are we still gonna have that defining character moment that we had in those episodes? Because episode 26 is like one of the greatest episodes of anime history in my opinion, and you wouldn't get that without that build up between Charles and Ray, and him, you know, kind of just coming to terms with the world that he's in, and just so many stuff. I can gush about the original series all the time, but this is like the movie. So based on my observations, that's how they're gonna work it in this original show. And it looks like they're gonna, you know, put in the storyline where he comes in and he tries to save the Valdorak girl, and, you know, she dies, which is probably the weakest episode of that string of episodes, which is like, but, you know, they're probably gonna cut out William B. Baxter, who was a beast. But yeah, I gotta separate my fan right now. I gotta separate my fan, be a critic, look at it objectively as a film, and that's gonna be a struggle for me and a lot of other fans, man. But yeah, there's a lot of scenes. Yeah, you see a scene where Ray gets caught up in a Corallian burst of Tapla Ray, so maybe this is the event in which she loses her ability to conceive. And once again, in a show that was very vague, if that was just something that was in Ray's head and that she came to that conclusion because she was traumatized by the event and whatnot, and she really wanted to have a kid, or, you know, it was something else. But maybe this film will finally give us a clear answer upon that. And, you know, you see Charles all freaked out when it happens. So, and I'm just want to say, like, you know, since Charles is like one of my favorite characters in the series, I'm glad that he has a major part in this film. So that's awesome. You know, thumbs up for Charles. Like if you like Charles, I guess. But in, you know, once again, we have a scene, and this is the scene where Renton finds Eureka hurt, and she's talking to her in the hospital, and this is like in episode 21. So this is way deep into the series. And, you know, again, it's the 4:3 animation. It's just turning me off, but I get that. That's like my only like legit criticism. Is like, why is it still in 4:3? But, you know, hopefully, you know, this is like a major scene for Renton and Eureka's relationship, and it looks like it's being completely retooled in the film. And, you know, we'll see how it works in the film. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, shrug. But I think that's all I really wanted to say about this particular PV. You know, a lot of shots from the original show, of course, in the rest of the trailer. So there's not really much left to talk about. But this is one last shot where you see it's the updated footage, and you see Eureka back in her traditional outfit, and she's looking at the Nirvash in its original Spec 2 form. It looks like the cockpit is changed back. So by the end of the film, you know, we're gonna get the original Nirvash look. Eventually, we just gotta fit, and you'll see that it still has the gold frames. So it's still in a transition period between, you know, its very militarized prototype look in the way we see it at the beginning of the series. And it has the red color scheme, which is what it didn't have during its SOF days. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we still got to find out when we watch the film. You know, can't figure out everything based on a 30-second PV, 90-second PV that's mostly old footage, that's untranslated. But I'm doing my best, guys. I'm doing my best. But that's really all I got to say. These last shots, I'm assuming that this is Holland and Tahoe holding hands at the end based on their outfits, because, you know, Tahoe's wearing black, and Holland was in his pilot outfit, so I'm assuming that this is Holland and Tahoe. But that's all I got to say about this. So like the video if you found out some stuff. You know, goes a little long, the last one was long. Apologize if this video was late. I thank each and every one of you for watching this video. And how do you guys feel about the original footage being incorporated into the film? You know, is it something that you'll be able to deal with? Is it going to be an issue for you? How do you feel about you know, Charles and Ray's storyline seemingly being retooled for the film? And yeah, that's all I got to say. I'm gonna try to do more videos like this where I'm just kind of speaking without a script, because I don't like to do videos without a script. I'm not very concise with my vocals and whatnot. You know, I stutter a lot, but I'm trying. I'm gonna put up another unscripted video about shows that I'm watching this season. So stay tuned for that. I'll try to get that up later. Hopefully by the before the end of the week. Also, follow me on Twitter. Follow me. I'm starting to post on Twitter now. I'm trying to post a lot more. So, you know, go in there, follow me. That's where I'm gonna give out a lot of my thoughts on the seasonal shows as they air. You're gonna get some of my thoughts on, you know, the new movies that I see and whatnot. So, you know, go down there, subscribe. I talk about a bunch of other things. Subscribe, not subscribe. Follow the Twitter if you like. And that's all I got to say with this video. Thanks each and every one of you for watching. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And that's all I got to say. This is your man on the outside looking in, signing out. Peace.